Hey, welcome to my video about reworking all base killer perks. But before we get started, I want to let you guys know that in advance, I didn't get any ideas personally for Unrelenting and Whispers. They're just kind of weird perks because overall I wanted to kind of keep the general theme of the perks. So trying to keep the theme of the perks for Unrelenting and Whispers and changing them without them being absolutely broken was pretty difficult. So I mean, leave your ideas in the comments if you have any for sure, because I I seriously blanked out on those. And also, subscribe. Come on, it's right there. You just scroll down. So I had the idea of reworking every base killer perk. And well, the idea mainly came from a lot of the base killer perks just kind of being lackluster, and a lot of them being just really strange and niche. Um, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna, give them a little bit of a shift and see if I can't make some of them more useful or, some of them more fun to use. All right. And the criteria for this isn't necessarily anything like special. I'm not doing all the perks because they need a rework, because some of them don't need reworks, and I'll come up on those as I go. But I just wanted to see like what could we change this to and it still keep the same spirit as the original. So starting off, we have Bitter Murmur. And Bitter Murmur, if you don't know what the original does, each time a generator is completed, auras of all survivors within 16 meters of that generator are revealed for 5 seconds. And then when all generators are completed, it reveals everyone for 10 seconds. So this is one of the perks that I don't think needed a change. But for the sake of this video, I made it so that when you down a survivor with Bitter Murmur, it would reveal every survivor working on a generator for 8 seconds. And so this would be a completely new effect, because for some of these perks, I have it on top of their old effect. But for Bitter Murmur, it would be its new effect and just show anyone working on a generator. And so you kind of get instant info about where everyone is. It loses its in-game portion completely, but I think that having to or being able to see survivors working on a generator is also very useful, and I think it's really a good thing for early killers, so they can kind of know what gens are getting done. In a similar way, like using barbecue can show you what gens are getting done, or using obviously thrilling or some other information perk like that. Okay, the next base perk, well, in quotes, is claustrophobia, which used to be the Demogorgon's perk, but it is whenever a gen is completed, all windows and vault locations within 32 meters of it become blocked for all survivors for the next 30 seconds. Okay, so for this idea, I wanted to kind of make it a bit similar to Deadlock in the way that when a generator is completed, block the windows and pallets of the generator with the new highest progress for 20 seconds. And I didn't list a range, but it would be smaller than the normal claustrophobia, so probably somewhere around 24 meters. And it would kind of just make the new highest gen a bit of a risk to work on if the killer is getting too close, or if it's a stealth killer, because you really, if you get off of it, you don't have any options around you, so you have to make good distance before you can even have a chance to not get hit. So it kind of puts a risk into greeting that generator, especially if it's at like 70% or 80%. So I think that just adds a new added risk with claustrophobia, and I think it makes it a lot better, because right now it just doesn't do much, especially since it doesn't even block pallets. Like, people can just loop a pallet without having to worry about the windows. All right, next up is Deerstalker, and Deerstalker itself is pretty simple. It's just you can see the auras of anyone on the ground slogged within 36 meters. And I for this one, I actually just wanted to add on to the effect, and I said that you can see the aura of every down survivors within 36 meters, same as normal, but you can also see the recovery of a down survivor on the left side of the screen in the same way that survivors would see it. So it's just kind of a bonus little tip. It also can tell you if they have Unbreakable from the speed, and you can tell if that maybe that they're trying to 99 then move, or if they actually don't have any recovery at all and they just started to move. Stretching is another simple one, and it just kind of increases your tear radius by 26%. I mean, it also grants blood points, but it's like it's minimal, honestly. But I decided that I wanted to have it have some kind of effect, so I made it be the ones that maybe aren't too crazy. I mean, it's the ones that don't affect the game too much, because obviously you don't want it to give exhaustion and stuff. So I made it so when everyone enters your terror radius, while injured, of course, because this first effect, they are afflicted with hemorrhage and blindness until they leave your terror radius. And just like before with the normal distressing, it would increase your terror radius by 26%. I just thought that having distressing have some other kind of effect and kind of, making survivors a little bit more on edge when they're in the terror radius. And it just makes, it makes people they're chasing while they have distressing drop more blood, so it makes it a bit more easy to chase that, and it also kind of removes a lot of information while they're in your terror radius, which I think is nice. Okay, next up is Fearmonger, and honestly, Fearmonger is one of the perks that I would say is in a perfect spot. It's just, it works really good on stealth killers, it can surprise people with normal killers, and it kind of makes them have to wait out their exhaustion whenever they're done repairing a generator, or whenever they hop off a generator. So, if you don't know what it already does, of course, when a survivor is repairing a generator, they suffer from blindness and exhausted while on the generator. And this effect lingers for 5 seconds after they stop repairing. So they kind of have to start walking after they repair a generator to kind of get rid of that exhaustion. So I kind of wanted to make it a bit more situational, but stronger in a way. So I made Fearmonger be related to another survivor losing a health state. So anytime a survivor loses a health state, it will cause everyone on a generator to be afflicted with exhaustion for 20 seconds and blindness for 60 seconds. And the timers do not reduce while you're on a generator, just like normal Fearmonger would be. So it's kind of like a pseudo slowdown for survivors that are going to want their exhaustion back. Because, I mean, they can just, get off the generator, wait for 20 seconds, and then get back on the generator, and they just won't have the exhaustion anymore. But it's, they could just sit on the generator just as normal and keep the exhaustion and it not really affect them, especially if they have something like Dead Hard, and then maybe they can work out that exhaustion during chase a little bit. But I think that this makes it a lot more risky to kind of like just sit on a gen when the killer is chasing somebody, and like it's not a hard and fast rule just like Fearmonger, but it makes it so that when you're on the gens and the killer's getting hits, it kind of punishes everyone working on the generator, so it kind of gives you a little bit of a side objective with your exhaustion if you want your exhaustion perk up. And a lot of these ideas kind of have the idea of side objectives. Not anything too big, but yeah, I like the idea for Fearmonger. I think it also rewards the killer for getting hits and by giving him that little slowdown. I mean, it's obviously not gen regression or anything, and they can just push through and finish the gen and then remove their exhaustion after. But some people are going to be wanting to walk that exhaustion off, and it just means if you chase someone off of a gen, they just won't have their exhaustion perks. All right, next up is Noed. Hex, no one escapes death. This is a crazy one. Very controversial one. So if you don't know, I mean, this one is pretty iconic, but Noed lights itself. The second exit gates are powered, and you get a little bit of faster movement speed. That one really doesn't matter, but every survivor is exposed. So everybody's one shot down until the totem is cleansed, and it basically just, some people call it a crutch, some people call it, just like an unfair comeback mechanic, but like, yeah, that's basically the gist on how it works. And but now, after the changes, well, it was changes a long time ago, but um, they made it where the totem itself reveals its own aura and gets bigger and bigger, so it's a bit easier to counter no-ed on maps where they have awful totem spots. So, I mean, it can be considered in a pretty good spot, and if you say that, I don't blame you. But I had a very interesting idea for no-ed that I think would, I mean, it still acted that surprise and still be strong, but it wouldn't be as strong as, everyone being insta down. Okay, so I removed the hex part of no-ed, and it's just no one escapes death. And now anyone who touches an exit gate will scream and be exposed for 60 seconds. And this is only the first time that you touch the exit gate. It's also important to note that if you touch the exit gate, and then you're exposed and then come back and do the exit gate while exposed, you won't scream. So it kind of has this risk and gives info to the killer, but it doesn't do what no-ed kind of unfairly does and makes you exposed in the middle of a chase and kind of just ends your chase because, oh, well, your survivors popped the last gen, now you're insta down. But, you kind of more, it's still a surprise because, you touch the gate and then all of a sudden, boom, you're exposed. But I think it's a bit more, it's a bit more like volunteered upon, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're the one who chose to open the gate with the new no-ed, and it's like, that there's a risk of new no-ed. But, I mean, you can have the good survivors take that chance, and it kind of just spreads it out. But it could also just, act as a great way to deter 99ing as well, because someone 99ing and then running up to the gate touching it, if you can reach them but when they're exposed, you can just insta down them, just like that. All right, next we have Thrill of the Hunt. Thrill of the Hunt is one that it's kind of underused. I don't even think it's that bad, but you get a 10% action speed penalty to cleansing and blessing, pretty much just anything with totems. And it goes up to 50%, of course, because 5 totems in the match. But it goes down as more totems get removed, so it starts to weaken. But it's actually a pretty strong effect. I wouldn't say it's that crazy because like the slowdown does help, and especially like with blessing. But I don't think it really does a lot for that slowdown. For totems especially, like I don't know. But I kind of took a different route with Scourge. I call it a Scourge Hook perk now. Scourge Hook, Thrill of the Hunt. And now, whenever you hook someone on a Scourge Hook, you reveal everyone who's in 60 meters of a totem, and anyone that is working on a totem loses 50% of their progress. And so it's basically like, if you know someone is on like your hex totem or something, you can kind of instantly, get the Scourge Hook, and then boom, you roll in their progress. And if you're anyone like Artist or like even Huntress and Trickster with right sightlines or anything, you can kind of interrupt that, and you can keep that hex up for a little bit longer, or stop them from booning. And it's a really good way to like counter people always getting on the hexes without doing like a slowdown. I think that having it on a Scourge Hook just makes it really interesting because it has that. I mean, we have already one Scourge Hook in our base perks, but I think adding another one would be fine. I mean, it's really interesting. Also, little note I forgot to add. Equipping the perk also spawns an additional Scourge Hook, so you get 5 instead of the normal 4 that you would with equipping the Scourge Hook perks. So you can kind of run this with other stuff, and you have an extra Scourge Hook, so you subvert that randomness, so you don't really have to worry about your hooks all spawning in the corner of the map. Maybe you have, with one more, it could still happen, but I mean, maybe you get a hook in an actual important spot. All right, next up is Insidious. Known really well for camping, of course. All it really does is just when you stand still for 2 seconds, you're undetectable until you move. I mean, of course, it has its niche, and we know its niche. It's face camping usually, basement Bubba. But I kind of give it a more interesting effect while still being pretty simple, and it's just gain undetectable for 25 seconds after hooking somebody. So you technically still could do Basement Bubba, but only for a limited time, and it kind of just makes it a little bit easier on new players, I guess. Um, that he still does have Insidious. He has 25 seconds of undetectable, but yeah, he'd still run out at some point. But it also makes it better at just being a normal perk because Insidious right now is not good at being a normal perk. So after getting undetectable after hooking somebody, you can easily surprise people on generators, and especially on indoor maps, sneaking up with someone like Bubba, it would be a very scary thought. All right, next we have Iron Grasp. Iron Grasp is just the anti-wiggle perk. I mean, it's pretty basic. It's just make it take longer to wiggle out and don't get affected by the push of the wiggle effects as much. So I definitely wanted to keep those effects. So because we're getting into the boil over annoying era because of the new great skill checks. Keep those effects previously, but I wanted to add that whenever you down somebody, you gain 50% pickup speed for 8 seconds with a 40-second cooldown. So it kind of encourages not slugging and more so just like downing and then picking up soon after. Because you will pick up faster, which makes it hard for flashy saves. It saves you a lot of time. And then along with that, you'd have the wiggle effects. So you save time there, and you can kind of make up for that time by going to like a basement or something, by going far to like a basement. So I think that having a perk that buffs pickup speed, I mean, it's rare. The only one is Fire Up, I think. Yeah, the only perk that buffs pickup speed is Fire Up. So having a pickup speed on a base perk would make a lot of sense. And yeah, it gives it a purpose apart from just being you can't deal with wiggle. Which, I mean, at this point, a lot of people can't deal with wiggle because of the new wiggle skill checks plus boil over. It's annoying. But it's possible to deal with, but a lot of more people are running Iron Grasp, I can tell you that. Next we have Jolt. And Jolt's pretty simple. It's just whenever you put someone in the dying state with a basic attack, all generators within 32 meters instantly explode and start regressing. And then it also applies 8% regression penalty. Okay. For this one, I wanted Jolt to kind of be a bit different, a bit stronger, and have a bit more range. So, after downing a survivor, the nearest 3 generators within 60 meters will begin to regress, and if their progress is over 50%, it will lose 15% progress. I thought this was a really interesting idea. No other gen regression kind of keeps or does the idea of if the generator's over a certain progress percent. I mean, you have the info perk with Tinker, but I thought it would be really interesting to make a gen regress by a big amount if it's closer to being completed. And you could probably tweak that number. 50% might be too little, so that it procs too often. But I mean, regardless, that's just kind of how I want to keep the idea where it's more reliable and does a lot more to generators that are higher up in progress. So Scourgehook Monster Shrine is actually pretty good. It spawns 4 normal Scourge hooks, of course, as normal, and it also makes basement hooks, Scourge hooks, and whenever you hook somebody on them and then you go away 24 meters, it makes them die 20% faster, which, I mean, yeah, this can be super useful. It can really, because all those times, and you know what I'm talking about if you play Killer, or even Survivor, all those times where a Survivor's about to hit second state, or just about to die, but they get rescued last second, those effects usually just, stop happening. Usually don't see that when you start running this perk and hooking people in Scourge hooks or in the basement. People actually die a lot more often on hooks if survivors just aren't careful to pay attention and get the save. But this perk is one that had a big glow up with the perk changes. So I think, personally, it shouldn't be changed fully. Just add people who unhook from a Scourge hook, just unhook slower. Just so they're a bit more vulnerable and I just thought it would be an interesting effect. Again, just like pickup speed. Nope. Well, actually, no, just no perk in the game makes survivors unhook slower. So I thought it was an interesting effect to add into the game. Just something that, um, like, sure, it tells them what hooks are scourge hooks in a way, but if you're running other perks like pain resonance, it's not really hard for them to know what hooks are scourge hooks. Okay, this next one's a real interesting one. This one's pretty different. Normal shattered hope is very simple. When you snuff out a boon, it destroys the totem, and it's just an easy. It's just an easy counter to boons. It's a very simple counter to boons, and it's kind of a band-aid fix, especially at the time, because boons are and were running rampant. I chose to take the hex away from Noed and put it on a Shattered Hope. And so now when you destroy a boon, it instantly lights into a hex totem. And now anyone who would enter a boon becomes exposed until they leave the radius of the boon. Or, of course, the hex totem is cleansed. And then after they leave the radius of the boon, they'll be exposed for 15 seconds after. And of course, I made this have exposed effect for a very obvious reason. Circle of Healing is the most popular boon. So I think catching someone out after using Circle of Healing and then being exposed is a pretty nice effect to have. And of course, not too strong because you have to snuff out a boon to light it. So, they could just go where the boon was snuffed out. They're usually going to know where that is. But, I mean, along with some other totem protecting perks, you could actually hold it pretty well. Sloppy Butcher is the next perk, and it just basically, when you hit people with your basic attack, you affect survivors with Hemorrhage and Mangled. It's actually pretty good. It is pretty good, and it makes Hemorrhage and Mangled a lot stronger too. It also makes Hemorrhage regression stronger and bleeding frequency more. But I wanted to use Broken in this set just kind of as an interesting effect, and I thought let's make Sloppy Butcher a bit strong off the start, because that's just an interesting idea for Sloppy Butcher. So I chose that every survivor you injure for the first time with your basic attack will be broken for 90 seconds. And I know 90 seconds sounds like a long time, but that's really similar to the Deliverance timer. And I think that having broken for 90 seconds kind of makes survivors a bit more cautious in that early game. And of course, it's not too overbearing. It just makes that beginning a bit slower, a bit more cautious. But of course, the only way for the killer to make it really overbearing is to go out of their way to hit all 4 survivors, which by that point they kind of deserve it. And I'm assuming that the first survivor they hit at that point will already have their timer really low. So I think it's a good way to add a little bit of pressure. And also when you have killers that can kind of only use their special attack and do pretty well, it very much help them because they can save their Sloppy Butcher on certain survivors and then use it later. Okay, lastly, we have Spies from the Shadows, and Spies from the Shadows right now is pretty simple. Anytime someone startles a crow within 36 meter of you, it gives you a loud noise notification. And it has a little cooldown of 5 seconds, obviously, so you don't get spam with notifications. But I kind of wanted to make this just an alternative. Better on some killers, worse on others. It's less info, more just aura reading. And so every time a bird is disturbed by a survivor, reveal their aura for 5 seconds with a cooldown of 25 seconds. Now, 25 seconds sounds like a long time, and I could see it going down to 20 seconds, but you don't want it to be too little because, crows are on loops. Crows are on loops, and it can be in jungle gyms and stuff, and having constant aura reading from crows while you're in a chase is a bit strong. So I think having it at 25 seconds, you'll still get it during the chase, but you just won't get it as much. And so it kind of adds a little interesting effect for people who benefit from that aura reading, kind of like Artist, Pyramid Head, Nurse, even. So yeah, I think it's just an interesting alternative. I don't think it's better or worse, but some killers would benefit from it, some killers wouldn't. All right, so that's all I got. As I said in the beginning, I did not have anything for Unrelenting and Whispers. I just have no idea. If you really stuck it through this whole video, congratulations. I'm surprised. I will personally come to your house and shake your hand. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one.